Hey, I'm trying to live until I die. Come connect, you know it's a lewd state of mind. Yeah, yeah, talking traveling. If you wanna fly, fitness and finance, living a better life. Keep it raw, no filter, living with no limit. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, let's get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Nick and Ted Show.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back to Lewd State of Mind.
Yeah, good morning.
We've had to rename the show. You know why? Because this is the third time you've come back.
Third time. It's an honour.
Thank you. Look, I've dressed up for you guys. This is the first time I haven't worn a t-shirt.
Oh, wow.
But it's a new shirt because that's the tradition. I've got to go wear something new. It's good luck.
Yeah.
That's just my thing.
That was one of the questions on your trivia night last week
Correct.
that I got right.
You did get that right.
Yeah.
So round one was all about Lewd State of Mind. So if you hadn't listened to us or you didn't know, basically round one was a waste of time. Do you remember what you got out of 10 for round one?
I think that was like an 8.
That's pretty good.
I had advantage being on here twice, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. 8 out of 10. I mean, one of the questions was actually who's been on more than one time.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
I definitely got 1 point for that one.
That was one answer you got.
When we get that one right.
Yeah.
Hey guys, once again, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having
It's been a while. I think we said it was about 10 months since you were here last.
Yeah.
There was a lot happening back then. Has there been a lot happening since then? Tell me.
Always a lot happening.
It just never stops.
Yeah,
we're up to our 13th rate rise. We haven't had any more, have we?
No.
Well, not directly.
Yeah.
Indirectly, yes.
Okay, please explain then.
Well, when you get a loan, the rate you have is often a discount off a standard rate, and the banks are reducing their discount, so they don't have to advertise that they're lifting their rates, but they have been over the last 6 months.
So hold on, Tick, stop. They're lifting their rates. The banks are lifting
Or they're
rates.
reducing their discounts.
Right.
For new customers. So new customers don't get as good as what people got a year ago.
And what's the housing market doing? Are people buying at the moment? What's happening out there?
Yeah, surprisingly, there's a few areas. People are still seeing that there's a market, and they're taking advantage of that. With people, there's definitely people that have to sell. These interest rates going through the roofs and living on costs going crazy. There's definitely investors wanting to sell out, and people are taking the advantage of buying those.
Have we got any stats or any percentages of people selling out because they're in mortgage stress? Is it as prevalent as what the media are making out?
I'm sure there's elements of it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't see as much in our face, but, you know, it's on the news. But I don't think it's as bad as what they say, but they have to make headlines. But I'm sure there's lots of people that are feeling it.
How many are you dealing directly with those people, or it's basically real estate agents and?
Yeah. No, there's been, we primarily work with quite a few real estate agents, and it has been still quiet. There are still sellers that are still here and buyers that are thinking that they're here, and they're just not being able to meet it the ground. And so some of the ones that have or need to sell will eventually meet the mark. But then it also works in different areas. Like there's different areas of Melbourne that have lower towards the borrowing end, or the under $1 million properties that are selling, and they're selling like hotcakes. Like there's just so many people out there. So there's always going to be a demand for houses, and people always still need a place to live. It's just the prices and what people will pay for is a bit different.
Okay, so regardless of the interest rate, people are still buying and selling.
Oh, they have to, don't they?
That doesn't stop, does it?
Or a lot of the talks about the migration and so many people coming in the country and so many houses getting built, so there has to be demand. Okay,
well, we've talked about it previously. The demand's not keeping up, is it? So the stock that's out there is technically in a certain price range you're talking about is getting gobbled up because they're afraid they're not going to have another opportunity regardless of the interest rates.
Yeah.
So current interest rates at the moment are what?
Home
For
loans,
a residential?
Yeah, home loans low sixes, 6.1, 6.2, sometimes a little cheaper if big deposits or a strong client, but low sixes.
And you said you've got a lot of clients or a lot of people coming to you wanting to get a better rate, and the banks are doing that?
Oh, a lot of that. We're doing a lot of that.
Does that make up a lot of your day?
Well, not us personally. We've hired staff that purely do that. So, definitely.
The
you
banks
should be looking at it.
Yeah, the banks are really looking at their back book, and the back book is just the existing clients at this point in time. So that's really where they're trying to add value and trying to give back to the existing ones that have sticked around. But over the last few years, and we've touched base in the last podcast how the rates have increased. Now that it's somewhat keeping it steady with the after the RBA have paused the rate rises over the last few months. I think the last one was in November 23. So now what the banks are really doing is trying to see what they can with what they've got, and then that's really where it comes down to.
And talking about the RBA, the last rate rise, as you said, was November. We're not looking at a rate decrease until at least the first quarter of next year. Is that still true, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think it's going to move a lot, either up or down.
In that period between now and
Yeah.
say March next year.
Like if you followed the news, you'd be thinking it's going up and down every month, but it hasn't moved for 8 months.
Yeah.
And the fixed rates, which is sort of a guide on the future, they're pretty similar. So it may move up once or twice, but
Are people fixing rates at the moment?
not a lot of.
Yeah, I haven't seen, but there's still that conversation. There's a lot of that conversation. I think it's just come from the headlines about a month ago that inflation's increased in the quarter, in the month of, I think it might have been May or so, or May or June, that inflation's increased. So now a lot of people are a bit worried that RBA is going to increase.
As you say, a lot of media fluff and fear mongering. I mean, what inflation's sitting around about the 4% mark or somewhere around there. Yeah, it's gone up 0.1, 0.2%, and the media jumps on it. I mean, people obviously the cost of living is going to get worse before it gets better. So there seems to be still a lot of money to be spent out there, which is the reason why the inflation rate is staying where it is. It needs to come down to about the 2.5% to 3%. Is that correct? For anything to start happening dramatically
Come down.
for the interest rates to come down.
Yeah, correct.
So we're going to be feeling, we as in the collective public are going to be feeling this pain for some time to come. Correct?
I mean, correct.
Well, it's not going to change a lot in a hurry, I don't think.
The biggest driver would be the cost of living when it comes to rental properties, mortgage repayments, and things like that. That has really driven it. There's a lot of like discretionary spending, so shopping, buying Gucci bags, things like that for people who have mortgages. That's not going to happen, and that hasn't been happening. So a lot has been driven by or also eating out, food and beverages. People are still going out. I mean, I went to a pub in Collingwood yesterday, and then last week we went to a bar, and it's just packed, and you can't even get a drink there. That was 2 weeks ago. I was in the city, and I was at there was a pub just along in Chinatown.
So we're talking about Melbourne for those listeners.
Melbourne.
Yeah, for those
and
listeners.
it's just packed, and this is so I don't know if.
Well, when you think about it, we're in the footy season, especially for Melbourne. We're at the height of entertaining and sport. This time of year, and people are going out to the pub prior to the game. Yeah. People are still going to the games. They're still spending this money. So
correct.
It makes you wonder why. Well, you can see why the inflation rate's not coming down because people are in pain, but they still want to live. And I think that's correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a lag from COVID where people got their liberties taken away from them and they reassess their life. They said, well, fuck, what is it all about? What is life all about? Is it about grinding until you're 65, retiring, then dying in an armchair somewhere?
I think the younger people are definitely thinking that way.
Yeah. Well, even me at 50.
Yeah.
It's like 50 and fuck it. It's like, what's the point? I mean, sure, you can make some sacrifices in other places, but why stop enjoying your life? Because if I'm working 40 hours a week, what's the point otherwise?
Yeah, that's right.
So as you say, it's going to take a while for this whole thing to sort of get to a point where it needs to reset a bit.
Yeah, even people cutting back a bit, they're just doing it slower. The government thinks they hit you hard with the rate rise, but it takes time for people to react now.
Yeah. I mean, and the people have still got to eat. I mean, Coles and Woolies, we won't even talk about those arseholes, because it's just, it doesn't even bear going into. Now, we've talked previously on the phone about what we're going to cover today. Now, our previous two podcasts have been really educational. We've had a really good response. I mean, the one takeaway from that we've got a whole lot of response from was the credit card limits and the amount of credit cards, whether you've actually got money on that credit card but the limit that you have goes against your borrowing power. So there's a lot of people that didn't know that, and we got a really good response from it.
Oh.
Now, the one thing that has affected me recently, since the last time we were talking, was land tax. Now, for those people that don't know, you guys actually help with the finance for this commercial property here that we're in, the studios are in. And of course, now I've got to pay land tax, and now I'm paying twice as much land tax. Can you explain what's happening and why? Now, not just commercial, obviously residential.
Yeah.
So can we explain, A, what land tax is, and B, why it's doubled in the last 12 months?
Well, your statement says a bit of that, doesn't it? It's got the COVID repayment plan on there.
Well, yes, I didn't. We touched on COVID, but so this is a direct result from COVID for the money that was spent by our government, and we're talking Victoria here. We're not talking any other state. Victoria had the biggest COVID debt, obviously, because we had the biggest lockdowns. Now, we're paying for that now, and it's called a COVID tax by way of a land tax.
Yep.
Is that correct?
There's actually a complete section, separate part of that goes purely towards paying out COVID over the next 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
That's how long it's going to take. Is there actually any figures on the amount?
Yeah, they have if you want to bring it up, Ash, I think...
Oh, welcome to Ash. Thank you very much for filling in today. Obviously, Mav's just retired. We had his retirement party at the weekend. Look, I love the presentation you guys do.
Shout out to Caitlin. She's left a little bit of a fluid in the
Shout out
fluid.
to Caitlin. So, what's that Where We Are slide? What's that all about? Go back to that one, Ash.
I might be able to touch on this. We've actually opened up another office.
Oh, so this is you guys.
Yes.
So rate one, obviously, you've got a new tagline. Can you go back to the tagline? It is facilitating the dream to wealth. Who came up with that? Was that you, Ted?
We had some marketing people do that for us.
Yeah.
But, it's long term, so we were in it for long term. So we just want to make sure people sort of take a long term view and
Well, it's very poignant. Very poignant, isn't it? It's exactly what you guys do. You're going to make some people wealthy.
Or property, a lot of people in property, and it's especially at the moment, if you're buying property, not making money in a hurry unless you get lucky, or maybe in Brisbane or Perth, but you got to be for long term.
For sure. Like the stock market, isn't it?
Definitely.
Right. Go back to that other one, Ash. So you've got 2 locations now for our listeners in Melbourne based.
Yep.
So what are the 2 locations you got there?
Mulgrave and Airport West. So we've got a lot of new team members up in the northern suburbs.
So Airport West is the new office?
Yeah.
And how long's that been open for?
Only about a month, I think.
Oh, cool.
There's about 10 out there most days, and similar out at Mulgrave.
Now, do you guys like walk-ins or phone, email?
You're more than welcome to walk in, but best to get in touch first.
Okay. We'll put all the contact details
Well,
up.
I'm still old school. I like face-to-face and talk and meet my clients. But a lot of new clients want to do it phone and email and video call, but we're open to both.
Well, the thing is these days is that you can do that.
Yeah, that's right.
It's perfect for me. We can just email and do whatever we need to do, and then you guys, you don't have to worry about making me a cup of coffee and making me feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, once you know someone, it's easy to do that.
Yeah,
I say to my clients, I'd love to meet you at least once, and then we get to know each other. Then phone and video is pretty easy after
You
that.
did that. You did that, Ted. We had breakfast in St Kilda, so that was pleasant. It was before your time, I think.
When you're talking about a lot of money for people, it's good to sit down and find out more.
Because as you said, that's the biggest financial decision people
For
are going to
most people,
make
yeah.
for most people in their life, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
What do we got next, Ash? So we're going into the land tax. What's the next slide we've got up there? Waiting. Land tax.
Hey, here we go.
And Caitlin, great job on the animation. We love it. We love it. All right, do you want to run down so land tax Victoria 2024, land tax general rates in Victoria from 2024 land tax year. So people that don't understand, this is the amount of land that their property sits on.
Correct.
So
Correct.
if
Yep.
you've got a standalone house, it might be quarter acre or whatever it is, half acre. If it's an apartment, it's an amount of that square footage of
their share of it, yeah.
the footing.
Your share of it, yeah, correct.
Yep. And
But it excludes your principal place of residency, your home. So if you've got a home, you don't worry about land tax. But once you start getting investment properties,
Well, that's an important point because I didn't understand that, but I got my last rate notice for land tax, and I'm sure St Kilda was on there.
There would have been a little small thing that says PPR, and if it's not, then it's something you'll need to.
hopefully some dashes and zeros next to that, and then on the other ones had the
Well, it was,
the penalties.
it was definitely an amount for it, so we're going to have to follow that up.
Yeah.
So once again, it's not for your principal place of residence.
Yeah, that's exempt. Yeah,
Correct.
So we're talking investment properties only.
Yeah.
So
correct.
this is specifically for people that have investment properties and or commercial properties,
Yep.
etc. Is there a difference between residential and commercial? Is there a different rate?
There is, and if the commercial property is under a trust, that's also another different rate as well.
Is it more or less for a trust?
More.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anyone, having a trust is another podcast that we're probably going to have to go down.
Get an accountant.
Yeah, you might have to get an accountant on that one. Yeah.
Man, they're hard to get this time of year, and it's tax time.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so residential's less than commercial. Is that what we just said? Or more?
I think that there is a somewhat of a surcharge, but we might have to check that. And if
Okay.
they are on the commercial property, most of it goes down towards the residential and the land tax side of things, and then the total value that you hold. They get conglomerated, or they get worked out in terms of that rate there, or they get put together in terms of the
Okay.
They don't miss
charges.
you. They don't miss you.
No, not at all. So a quick rundown there. So if the land holdings is under $50,000, there's no land tax. 50,000 to 100,000, we're looking at $500. 100,000 to 300,000, $975. So that's are we talking that's going to be an apartment or a townhouse?
So this is just the land value, right? So
Just the land value,
correct,
right?
correct.
Okay, not
Yep.
the total value of the property.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes you look and go, "That's great. They've only valued the place at that," but that's just the land component. And it's just, a bit like your rates, your normal council rates, it has a value on there. It's
Yeah.
normally a conservative figure, but the councils are getting better at lifting it to charge you more
Does
rates.
that council rate, does that pertain to, has that got any value when it comes to value in a property?
No.
So whatever they say on the rates thing has got
Not to the
nothing
banks
to do
anyway.
with, not to the banks.
Yeah, correct.
So you can look at your rate notes and go, oh, my property's gone up in value. No, it hasn't. they're just charging you more because
They want it to be
Yeah,
as high
yeah,
as
yeah.
possible,
That's right. Yeah,
because they can do that.
They can do that. Yeah, correct.
So we're looking, so 300,000, 600,000, 1350 plus 0.03% in the amount.
0.3 is the levy, isn't it?
This was including the levy for the 2024. The next slide is actually 2023, so we'll look at a bit of a comparison in a bit. But we'll continue on with this one for now.
All right, 600 to a million, 2250 plus 0.6, and then we've got a million to 1.8. What's the average price? I'm going to quiz you. What's the average price of a quarter acre of land? And that's a big parcel. Let's say half of that. What's the average price?
The median price in Melbourne's is getting close to $1 million,
yeah,
but
$1 million, yeah.
surprisingly, Brisbane was going past it apparently. So,
just for land. So we're looking what's
the land. Well,
what's an average block? What's an average block of land go for?
I would say it'd be $750,000, something close to it. That's the most of the value
Yeah.
in any property is the
Yeah.
land.
Okay.
So it'd be getting close to that.
And that we're obviously not talking about these giant suburbs that
The
have
new
been
estates, yeah.
new estates. They're a lot cheaper, aren't they?
Oh, they're still going. I think the blocks are getting smaller and the prices,
Going
are
higher.
holding.
Yeah, holding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're beginning up to close to $500,000.
Yeah, $500,000.
The old shrinkflation. Fuck, $500,000. Plus the price of it. So you're not getting anything decent under $1 million, are you?
Oh, you got to go a long way out.
Yeah, that's right. You go further away.
We discussed that last time.
Yeah.
Well, that's what our first home buyers want, but
Sad.
they just can't do it.
Yeah.
I know it's sad, isn't it? We did paint a very grim picture for first time home
Yeah, we
buyers.
did talk about that.
So we'll go to the end of that. So $3 million and over. That's a big piece of expensive land.
It could be multiple properties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these will be like all together. So this is an aggregate value.
Oh right.
Yeah. So then what they'll do is they'll look at it. If you've got 3-4 investment properties,
Yeah.
they add that together, and that's probably what you're looking at. in
Rightio.
terms of paying.
Okay, so technically, if you've got 3 or 4 properties, land tax is going to be around. Are we saying it's around $31,000 or not? So what?
Oh,
paint
they'd be nice properties. You know, they're $1 million properties each. So you're probably under that band, but yeah, it's getting in and around 10 grand, isn't it?
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Nick, can I get you to move to the right? 'Cause you're blocking.
Sorry.
Thanks. All right, keep going. Just marking that one.
Good on you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of money, and this is twice as much as what it was last year.
So let's have a look.
These are the current rates, yeah.
These are the current rates of
Okay.
2024.
So-
Correct.
So, if we go back to 2023, Ash, the next
So
next
look
one.
at that most. Actually, probably look at that. Yeah, most about 31,000. Yeah. So last year this was about 27, and then you can also notice that between 50 to 30 there wasn't any charges for people. So you see a lot of investors now are coming into starting to pay land tax in the new financial year, even if they've got that one property, or even if it's an apartment that's, St Kilda or whatever. And they're usually with the apartments, because what happens is that whatever the land size of the apartment is, it gets then divvied up by how many apartments are on that land size.
Correct. Yep.
Yep. So those guys will now be paying land tax.
Bit of a catch-all there.
And so for anybody that has an investment property, that's going directly back to the tenant, isn't it?
Over time.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, indirectly.
Yeah, indirectly.
Yeah.
Can you,
That plus other costs. Yeah.
well, for residential, they can pass that on legally at any time. Is that correct? Because you can do that with commercial. Any outgoings.
No, so
Yeah,
it's a little
residential's different.
Yeah, you can do it just through your rate, your rental reviews. New tenant comes in, they put up the market rate.
And I think we said earlier in a previous podcast that leases, residential leases, are 6 months and a year now. Like they're making them as short as possible so that they can add these increases to the rent. Because once you've got a rental agreement, that's it. It's a fixed price.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So these landlords are getting smart and going, well, I'm going to only give you 12 months, and in some cases even 6 months, which is terrible for a tenant. And then what they're doing is just chucking this land tax back on. Everybody's rent's going up,
Yeah.
adds to the cost of living. Nothing's getting better.
Yeah.
Well, the people who are seeing that are tenants that want to buy, that's probably their major reason for wanting to buy, is that they don't want to be under the control of a landlord that can make a decision every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't blame them. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And you imagine if you've got a family and you're settled somewhere, and you're struggling like everybody else is at the moment, and then if you can't pay the rent increase, you've got to find another property, and you've got to find another property within your budget, and that the budget's just getting
Or with that uncertainty that you don't know what it's going to be in a year's
exactly.
time,
And
or
you've
when
got
your lease runs out.
well, and having kids in school and stuff like that. It's
Having to move around. Yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's
tough.
It's a terrible outlook. As you say, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So with regards to land tax, obviously we know what it's there for and why it's gone up, because we're paying for the government's mistakes they made through COVID. Do we all agree that?
Yes.
Yep.
The
Everybody's
jump. It's such a big jump. It has to.
everybody's feeling the pain. And you said this is specifically to cover the COVID cost runs.
Yeah, so
this has
between-
got nothing to do with a rail loop or an airport. It's got nothing to do with that.
That's
does
what it says on your statement.
Yeah.
It's called the COVID levy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, between 23 to 24, I'm sure that these land tax that were introduced, or now that these different banners have been put in, has been to fund different projects in Victoria or different states. But yeah, it's very clear on even the SRO website that the 23 to 24 jump, and a big jump, is to pay that COVID debt back.
It even says the length of time on the website as well.
And we said it was 10 years. Fuck.
2033.
Yeah, 24 to 2033, yeah.
Question for you, because this is a Victoria problem. How many investors have you got on your books going out of town? How many people are going, fuck Victoria, and for good reason,
Yeah, when
and
you
going
start
investing somewhere else?
get multiple clients say that, look, I'm looking to buy interstate, and okay, great. Do you know someone there, or why are you buying there? One of the common answers is, oh, the land tax is just too hard here. So yeah, when you hear it that many times, it's in the main reason.
Do you think it's easier, well, obviously it is easier today, for somebody to buy a property out of state without setting foot in it? Is it something that you would do? Because I'd feel quite comfortable with all the resources available to me as an investor
Yep.
to go find me a house, get it inspected, find me a tenant, find me some finance, let's just do it.
We've had a few do it. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would say, I mean, there's lots of buyers advocates, and I believe in buyers advocates, that they know the area. So you might see a video or watch a walkthrough and the house is fine, but you don't know the area around it. So,
But does it matter from an investment point of view? Well, I suppose it does in
yeah,
certain...
you're still looking at long-term growth. So I think either you'd want to see it face-to-face, I think, but there's other people that you can rely on to help you. And, yeah, so it is easier.
So you wouldn't do it? Would you do it?
No, I wouldn't do it. I would if I do it, I would go. I would go there.
You'd jump on a plane and go?
Yeah. Have a look, walk around the neighborhood.
Yep.
Walk at different times of the day, the night, just to see who's around. Yeah. And you get a good idea
Do a
of it.
police check on the neighbours?
Yeah. Knock
Yeah,
on the door.
Perth and Brisbane are the two big spots at the moment. I'm from Perth, so I know it quite well. And I've got some clients talk about places that I know. And I'm thinking, I think you should go and have a look because you don't really know. Because they compare it to Melbourne or where they're from. And it's by the beach, but in Perth, everywhere is by the beach. And
Yeah.
20 minutes from the beach in Perth is a long way from the beach, whereas here it's close. So,
We actually had some good friends of ours that actually bought an investment property in Perth. Never saw it, never went to visit it, did it through a buyer's advocate and did the investment, and it's doing the return that they said it was going to do. But also saying that, they've just moved to Sydney and they had a rental advocate find them a rental property.
Yep.
Paid a lot of money.
Right.
They turned up with their young child and the place was full of mould. And it was like, we can't fucking live here.
Yeah, right.
You know? And I don't know if it's a Sydney thing or it's just people in the industry just taking the piss, but you pay money to somebody to do a job and that's the result you get. You know, you're not paying them. It's as simple as that. And if you have paid up front, you're going to want your money back. That's terrible.
Absolutely.
So there's pros and cons, you know. And as I said, that was just an example that we've known. But commercial property for me, it comes down to dollars and cents, square meters, and once again it comes down to the area. And if you've got all the data that's available to you with growth and freeways and everything that's going to go on in that area. Technically, you don't have to see 4 concrete walls to know what the end result's going to be, do you?
Well, I guess commercial and investment, it's got that similar thing where I'm not going to live in it, so I don't care. But, yeah, so you might still want to know a bit about potential.
Yeah, a lot of people have got a lot of emotion involved in an investment decision. They're going with their heart, not their head, like they are going to live in that place.
Yeah.
Which you've got to take that. You got to take. Do you agree? Take that out of the equation. It's a number. It's a dollars and cents, and it's a purely number game, isn't it?
I think you definitely have that mindset, but I've had clients that they buy through their self-managed super fund and they got caught out buying through spruikers or an off the plan in Brisbane, and it's not the good property or it hasn't got good potential. So I think there's still an element of getting involved and not just purely that. So it's a bit each way.
Yeah, well, as you say, there are a lot of factors to consider.
Yeah, that's right. And I think going through the whole motions, being able to find the right property, going through the numbers and speaking to all these different experts, getting advice can get emotionally taxing if you don't do it as your normal job.
Yeah.
So that emotion gets involved in it. So obviously we always like to guide clients and people through that emotion to really stick to the numbers point of view, because we've had a few clients that make a decision just based on the emotion, and it's come down to where it doesn't really make sense on the numbers side of things, and you really have to remove themselves out of the emotion and really think about.
We're talking about investment, or we're talking about their own
investments as well. Sometimes, because
Yeah.
people want to make money, and that making money is that emotional part of. All right, what can we do with that money, all that type of stuff, and gets involved and goes through that as well.
You can understand how people get excited and get carried away with it,
That's
know,
right.
and you'll put the numbers in front of it because that's your job.
Yeah.
It's about making the numbers work, so they get a return on their investment.
Correct. Yeah.
But they want to go down this road, which maybe they can't really afford, but they'll overextend themselves.
Yep.
and then the numbers don't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, keep that emotion out of the equation, and it's just a financial transaction. We're talking about investing,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But often your home's your one of your biggest investments as well. Like you said earlier in the
Yeah,
show,
exactly.
actually. So there's an element there as well when you're buying home that you still got to take.
Well, as you say, you're dealing with that on a daily, weekly basis, where maybe you just got to sit in there and go, look at the figures. You can't afford this. That this is not possible for you. You have to refocus. I mean, how many times have you said that to your clients?
Yeah, or the underquoting doesn't help, but in the market where they think an area is this price, but once they get involved and start looking and missing out, they work out, hang on, I'm 100,000 more if I want to buy in that area.
Well, let's touch on underquoting because we haven't mentioned it yet on the podcast. The act of underquoting is a real estate agent saying this property has a value between this range and this range, say 550 to 590, when technically the market dictates that it's 650. So we're like 100 grand over what, or 50,
if you're looking
70.
at the bottom end, yes.
Yeah, and this is happening on a regular basis, isn't it? Are you finding it's
It
always
happens-
going to be the case?
It happens because it works for the vendor and the agent's working for the vendor.
It's illegal though in Victoria, isn't it?
I think
There is
technically
that.
it is.
Yeah, there is.
There's some
I think there's a
guidelines.
range. Yeah, there's guidelines to it.
I know a couple of
But
I've
had-
read in the media a couple of real estate agencies have been done for underquoting. Because that's the thing is, if you do something on a constant basis and you're either fudging the lines or you're going over the lines, it's eventually going to catch up with you.
The extreme ones, I think they do catch out and people can complaints in. But yeah, so once you're in the market, a little bit, you get a better idea what they're really worth. And occasionally you might get some bargains that fall in that price range, but often they won't.
Are there any bargains at the moment in the Victorian market?
I think there's enough demand out there that the bargains they're not really there. You might get lucky, or I'm a believer with all my clients that if they're buying for the long term, I'm not too fussed when they buy. If they pay a little bit too much, if it's a good property, it's okay if they're going to hang on to it. But I've had clients that say I want to buy a property then sell it in a couple of years. Well, yeah, then you got to be lucky or very good. Or handy.
What's the sense in that? Because you
Well,
technically,
from what they see, what's happened in the past, what their friends have done, or what their friends say they've done. I bought this place for this and I sold it for this, but maybe they've done it up, or maybe they did get it cheap for whatever reason. But
well, so that's the thing is you got capital gains tax for a start on anything you make, and then
the selling fees and the tax to get in, the stamp
Exactly.
duty to get in, selling
And-
fees to get out.
and you correct me if I'm wrong, you can't claim on certain renovations within a certain period of owning an investment property.
That's another accounting question there, I think. But
I
tax-
remember having a conversation with my accountant about it.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, go buy something," because I said, "I want to buy something when I'm renovating." He goes, "Well, hold on a sec. You buy it, you sit on it for 2 years, and within those 2 years, you can only replace, like say, an air conditioner. If it's got an old air conditioner on it, you've got to replace it for the same type of air conditioner. You can't go with a split system." So there's all these rules around that, which obviously are.
I know that.
Yeah, you didn't know that.
No. Must be, yeah.
Ash,
Is it different types of value of the actual unit, or
look,
if you're increasing the value by too much, you can't claim it? Is that certain rules
look,
around
what
that?
we'll do is we'll get Ash to do a bit of a quick check on that, and we'll come back after the break and just see whether I'm right about that. But I mean, that was one instance, one conversation I had with my accountant that I do remember, but I'm pretty sure it was along those lines. So as I said, don't quote me. We're going to fact check that. We're going to come back and see what it's all about.
Good to fact check.
So we're talking about the COVID repayment plan, which is a 10-year plan. We've talked about whether there's any deals to be had out there. Obviously, not much. Commercial properties going through the roof. Interest rates aren't going anywhere. Who's buying, and what are they buying? What are you seeing on a week in, week out basis, apart from trying to get somebody a better interest rate?
Yeah, well, I think we touched on it before with people who's sick of that rental market, rents going up every few months and not having the stability of keeping their investors only keeping a short term. So I've worked with a few, a lot of them are just owner occupiers or looking to buy into, and just they're sick of that rental side of things, just want to get a place of their own.
What are they buying? Are they buying apartments? They're buying townhouses. What sort of price
Yeah,
bracket are we talking about here?
Yeah.
The townhouse is obviously more affordable, so it might be 3-4 on the block. So that's what people. I mean, borrowing capacity's got tougher. We probably talk about that later. And we talked about it last time, but prices are still gradually going up. So it's harder to get for someone on the same income to get. They get less money from the bank, so they're buying a little cheaper. So they're doing what they can, and
Of course, we covered that in a previous podcast about how much money you need, your income versus your borrowing power. You know, and so what you're saying is between then, 10 months ago, and now, people's borrowing capacity have gone.
yeah, they've gone.
How much? We're talking 5, 10%.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah.
But the recent tax changes from 1 July got people back up a tiny bit. The banks are trying to give out more, but they've got rules to follow. But yeah, living expenses is the big one. Kids in private school, private health insurance, they're affecting borrowing capacity.
That's insane. We covered that last time, didn't we? Yeah. So
The other
there's
thing that we might have mentioned as well last time is that the banks have their, depending on, it doesn't really matter what you spend. If you spend over a less amount of what they think you should be spending, they'll take that as and they call this the household expenditure measure, the HEM. That's what we call it.
HEM.
HEM. And
because that covers Netflix subscriptions.
yeah, well,
as
it's
well
all in
too.
there. Yeah, that's right. But that HEM, which is the standard, and if you spend less than that, or that's what you declare you spend less than that, they'll take that as just whatever the average. Well, they'll take whatever they think you would spend based on your income, where you live, your family situation, and that number has been changing consistently throughout the banks every month, every 2 months, just to be able to.
Or keep up with inflation too.
Yeah, keep up with inflation. So I would say that figure ends up increasing because of the inflation, cost of living.
Yeah, for sure. But are you saying that banks are actively doing more to lend more money to people, regardless of their guidelines and rulings?
They're tinkering with their calculators to be able to lend more.
Okay. So they've been proactive, yeah?
Yeah, well, they're trying. That's how they make money, lending
Of
out
course.
money. So they're keen to do it. I think their numbers are dwindling a little. So they're trying to get money out, but there's rules to follow, and just the general cost of living is restricting people.
Oh, no, it's ridiculous.
They don't want to lend to people and then have it to foreclose later. So, they're trying, but it's tricky.
Yeah. So in the last period, what's the amount of new mortgages compared to previous years? So new mortgagees or new applicants, what's the percentage based on say 2023? So if you had 50,000 mortgages last year, how many are you doing this year? Is it 70? Is it less? Is it more?
There's a lot percentage less investors, definitely, because of what we've discussed with taxes.
Yeah.
The migration is still meaning that the amount of people buying homes is still there, but it could handle more, and there's a lot of people that can't buy.
Well, if we're talking about new migrants, are they struggling to qualify?
Well, actually, I've worked with a few of them actually, and so some of my clients are nurses from Asian countries, so Singapore, and they've been able to get their PRs, especially nurses, within 6 to 9 months of being here.
PR,
so permanent residencies.
right?
Yep. It's come from a different country, especially an Asian country, but based on the skill. So that touches a little bit on the skilled immigration. There's still a lot of those first-home buyer schemes out there. We touched on last podcast. And a lot of them are being able to utilize those schemes because of the permanent residency status.
Yep.
They're able to only put 5% down. So even if they've only been here for a few months, the banks are still being able to give them the opportunity to be able to buy here.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
really
exactly
helped.
what we want. Because that migration's not slowing down for any time soon, is it?
Yeah.
But it's still, the people that are buying are generally couples or families. They're not the singles anymore.
Yeah.
So that's tough for singles. They're buying apartments. They can't go to a townhouse.
Yeah. And the thing about apartments, unfortunately, is they don't have that capital growth that houses do they?
They don't, but they are secure. They're a lot more secure, especially during these times with crime rates are increasing. A lot more security that I've had a few clients come to me wanting to buy apartments just because of the security point of it.
Oh, really? It's that bad?
Your car's getting broken in. Yeah, I've got a lot. Yeah, different people. I've got a mate that his car got broken into. They took it from his house, drove it up and down, went on a cop chase, returned the car back. So
Back to his driveway.
Back to his driveway.
Yeah.
And they fled the scene. And they're not you haven't been able to catch them
Why
at all.
bother? Return it, and just in case it's been
gonna
nice.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to do the job properly, drive it somewhere and set it
It
on
was
fire.
insane. And the shitty thing there is that because it's returned, there's no corporate. My mate's been. He's like, well, the cops are questioning him. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Where have you been for the last
Where you
2
going?
hours?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
we actually, talking about that, we live in an apartment building in St Kilda, as you know, and we've had bikes stolen from our bike rack in our basement, which has got a security door. What they're actually doing, so when you've got a park in apartments, you know, we've got a car stacker, we've got an automatic door. When you go out, the automatic door takes a certain amount of time to go down. Now, if they're not nipping in there and you're not aware of that, and they can do that any time of day or night, they're actually coming through the front door. So we've got a glass door which has got a magnetic lock on it, and they're actually ripping the door open, like ripping from the lock open, and going in the front door and bolt cutters stealing bikes off the bike rack.
Wow.
And this is so they've gone from coming in the back to just fucking coming in the front. It's insane. It's insane. And it's a little bit scary. Obviously, they can't get up to the apartment because of the security system. But we've had to take our bikes off the bike rack and put them further into the cages because that's what's happening. And of course, you'll never see them again. It's a drug transaction.
that's
It's
right.
money. It's cash. That's all it is. It's just opportunistic. But they say opportunistic. It's planned. That they have bolt cutters. They know how to get into these doors. I mean, they could have shattered the whole door, but it didn't really matter to them. It's like unbelievable. So when we saw the footage, it was like, fuck, they're not coming in the
Brazen.
back, they're coming in the front now.
Brazen, yeah.
It's unbelievable. As you say, with like cars and home invasions and stuff.
Yeah.
It is scary.
Yeah.
It is scary.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. Yeah, and especially when you've got a family sleeping in the.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
Anyway, land tax. Have we covered everything with land tax? We've got a land tax per state. Does it? Are we worried? Have you got that slide up there, Ash?
It was interesting because we're all Victorians and we know what's happening here. We all hate it, but then we see some headlines and other states are caught on or catching on because they want their piece of the action. So
They're doing the same thing, yeah?
yeah, different, but they're increasing. And I think New South Wales one we saw that headline. Is that
Yeah, the
something
New South
coming up?
Wales headline, even Queensland. If you look at the slide,
Yeah,
it
just scroll
depends
down,
on the
Ash.
amount that you have.
There we go.
Yeah.
So land tax per state. So Victoria, Queensland, WA, and New South Wales.
So the reason why it's a bit of a let me go through this is 'cause
Yeah, do that. Please explain.
what we've got is the orange line at if you've got a total aggregate value on land value, it's at $1 million. That's where that's at in terms of the yearly figure on the left side.
Yep.
Quotes what the land tax would be, and this is based on the 2024 year.
Yep.
So Victoria's the highest on that one. But as you go up, it's Queensland, yeah?
Yeah, and then
But that's a lot of property,
The
12
yellow,
mil.
yeah, the yellow one is is that the yellow line? Yeah, the yellow line is at if your aggregate value is at 1.5, and Queensland, surprisingly, if you've got more than $1.5 million of land value in Queensland, you're paying more. You're paying about 12 grand, whereas in Victoria it's about 9.
Oh, really?
So, and you can see slight changes in maybe slight thresholds that it could be, well, in Queensland, if you've all your aggregate lending is before or under that 1 million mark, then you can really see that if land value starts to increase further in Queensland, it can get more expensive than other states.
The other one, the stamp duty per state when you're buying is different per state as well.
Yeah, it is, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Victoria's the highest, I think.
Victoria's highest. Of course we are. Of course we are.
Yeah.
So as you say, what they're gonna do is they're gonna go, well, Victoria's been getting away with this shit. Let's give it a go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How many people that you know personally are getting out of the Victorian market because of the land
Oh,
tax?
of course, because we're in this industry, we're seeing more than the normal person. But yeah, but normally I've had the odd. We had quite a few out of COVID that want to get out of Victoria, so went up to Queensland.
But we also said that was people gone up to Queensland after COVID and said, fuck it, this is not what we thought.
Correct,
And they've actually
yeah.
come back
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had one client buy 3 times
Yeah.
within going up to Queensland.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
really?
In the last
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, so this goes back to not knowing the place, not being there. you're making judgment calls based on, you know, things that you've heard, and you've got to really spend some time.
But he's got
really
lucky because the prices have gone
Oh,
up.
yeah,
so
that's
he's
very
bought and
true.
sold for more. And
Yeah,
bought
yeah.
and sold for every
That's very
time.
true. Yeah.
Well, that goes back to there's no bad time to get into the market, isn't it? You know, there's a bad. It's
Well,
say-
he got lucky because short term he's
yeah.
made money, but yeah.
yeah.
If you're lucky, yeah, there's no bad time. If you're
No.
lucky.
But as you say, long term. I mean, property is a long term investment
Yeah.
for a lot of people, and there's no real bad time to get into the market.
Well, Perth's a good example. Like
Mm.
it's going crazy there now, and if you want to buy a house in Perth now, you look at a property online and it might be gone the next day.
Oh, really?
So it's crazy in the Perth.
Can we explain why Perth's doing this? What's the allure with
Well,
Perth? Because they had a boom and then they had a crash, and you're saying they were
Well,
in a boom
their
again.
price, because I'm from Perth and I know the area, their prices didn't go up for about 15 years. So it was just really cheap. And even now, when from our point of view, from Melbourne, you think, oh, you could buy a nice house near the beach, not far from the beach, for 700,000-800,000. You think that's crazy. I'll go and buy, and the weather's beautiful, the beach is beautiful. But you know, if you had bought it 20 years ago, for the first 10, 15 years, it wasn't moving. But it has gone up a lot in the last sort of 3 or 4.
Have they got a migration influx? What's causing
I think it's
it?
about there's a bit of mining money, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think it'd be mining if there is the immigration.
But it's a bit more affordable. And,
Yeah.
and that's where Queensland started. 10 years ago you could buy in Brisbane for quite cheap, but now it's not so much.
We've had some friends that have got a young family that have gone over there, and are absolutely fucking loving it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a long way to go.
Isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only bonus is for those bogans because it's close to Bali.
Yeah, it wasn't. A lot of people from Perth go to Bali.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
A lot of Victorians go there as well too.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
enough
A bit
bogans
further.
here to make up the numbers. Well, in summary, land tax is going to be here for 10 years. Now, are we saying that it's going to increase incrementally over this 10-year period, or is what's
I'm sure it will.
Yeah,
based on
it could.
inflation, obviously?
Yeah, correct.
Just the property prices going up causes more
Oh,
revenue.
right. Well, there you go, cause and effect. So the property price is going to go up, land tax is going to go up.
That's one of the ones we picked up from New South Wales. We looked at it, and they're all complaining that they had thresholds that had to be above a certain amount before you had any. So you can see it's on a 0 there.
Yeah.
But the effectively moved to a catch-all. If you've got a property prices going up, they're not lifting the thresholds anymore.
Okay.
So the percentages aren't changing, but the property prices are going up. So effectively you're paying more.
So it's like alcohol tax. It just keeps on going up every year. We talked about that. It's like, when do you stop? How much for a pint of beer is too much? Because some of them are like $20.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Where do you go to? Where do you drink?
Well, I don't drink beer, but that's probably,
Well, there you go.
that's probably I don't
You're never going to
realise,
know
yeah.
the problem.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's insane, isn't it? And alcohol tax, and of course,
You go smaller beer, yeah?
yeah. Well, that's the thing is like because
Drink at home.
because it's high alcohol, it's more expensive. So you can buy a pint of beer for $10. It'll be a draft beer. It'll
Yeah.
be 4%. You get a nice double IPA, hazy, juicy thing that's 6 or 7%. They actually say to you, hey, before they pour it, do you realise this beer is going to cost you $22, $24?
Oh, wow.
We've paid $24 for a pint of beer, haven't we? Yes.
Thumbs up.
There you go, thumbs up.
Should have been a thumbs down.
So now, well, that's the thing is like if you like tasty beers,
Right,
you know, it's like champagne. You know, it's like ladies like the good champagne, don't they? You know,
Are they tasty beers?
they are tasty. They are
Okay.
tasty. Yeah, they are tasty beers.
fair enough.
Generally, the more expensive they are, the tastier they are. But as you say, you got to get instead of getting a pint, you're going with a schooner or a pot. You
Yeah,
know?
right.
You know, which is sometimes safe too, because if you don't know, if you
alcohol
haven't had
level.
them before, if you haven't had them before, they might not be too tasty. So it's
Right,
like
right,
you don't
right,
want
right.
to chew on a whole pint. Oh, that's making me thirsty. Let's take a break. This podcast is brought to you by Holy Shirt Australia. Holy Shirt Australia are 100% online. They're Australia's largest no minimum custom print and embroidery company. All their services are completed in-house and they can deliver all orders promptly and professionally. They like to keep it simple and straightforward, so they offer cool stuff that can be custom printed or embroidered to your liking. They have an easy-to-use online designer to build your custom apparel from the comfort of your home or office. They offer pricing that reflects your individual order, and remember, they are no minimum on all their products. They deliver what the customer expects when they expect it. They've got over 1,500 products ready for you to custom print or embroider today, right now. So head to holyshirt.com.au for all your custom clothing requirements. And we're back, guys. We forgot to toast.
Cheers.
Cheers to Buckfast and the
Cheers
guys
to
at
Buckfast.
Chapel Street Cellars. I know you love this stuff.
Just what I
Ted,
need.
yeah. He goes, I need something to pick me up. I said, I've got exactly yes, isn't it? It's
Yes.
good. Hey, while we were taking a break, we did do our fact checking
Homework.
on that tax deduction for property renovations. So I was right, wasn't I?
Well done.
It says up there, when claiming tax deductions for property renovations on investment properties, you need to understand that unlike other expense deductions, you can claim renovations as an immediate deduction to offset the tax on your rental income.
You can't claim.
So you can't claim. Sorry, I'm going to start that again. Fucking idiot. I was correct. So when claiming tax deduction...
Do you want Nick to read it?
This is what happens when I read ads. I either get it right the first time or not. When claiming tax deductions on property renovations for investment properties, you need to understand that unlike other expense deductions, you can't claim renovations. I was correct. As an immediate deduction to offset the tax on your rental income. So as we talked about it previously, if you buy an investment property and say the air conditioner breaks down, you have to replace it with the same air conditioning system that it was. You can't do a split system, and you can't.
Whatever you spend on it, you can't claim it.
You can't
immediately.
claim on it immediately.
Immediately, yeah.
So there's a, what did we say? There's a 2-year period. Is that correct?
Well, I think what we're saying is you need to talk to your accountant about depreciation and get the facts right.
So we discussed when we were off air about people buying investment properties not understanding about tax deductions.
Yeah, they buy the property and then maybe a year or two later when they do the tax return, the accountant says, oh, did you do your tax depreciation schedule? So, yeah, you should talk to your accountant before. We tell our we give them a brochure on it and say, get your schedule. You might have to pay between $500 to $800 for the schedule, because it's a QR person, surveyor that does it, a professional. They have to be licensed, but they give you a list of what your property, what deductions you can claim over the next, several years.
So
and it's generally a good amount, so definitely worth spending the money on.
Okay, so if we can sum up what deductions means for our listeners and viewers.
So in general, what it is, if you buy a house for investment, there's fixtures and fittings that over time you'll have to replace because they wear out.
So we're talking air conditioning units. We're talking about hot water
floor
cylinders.
coverings, dishwashers.
And it even
curtains,
comes down to drapes too, doesn't it?
all those sort of things. Yeah, they'll all run down. You have to replace them, so they let you claim it gradually over time. And that's probably why these renovations, you spend the money, but you can't claim it all straight away. But gradually you can get it back.
Yeah, exactly. So our advice is obviously get a good accountant.
Yep,
for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
If you're buying one property or doing multiple properties, you've got to set those systems in place to get those deductions.
Well, now with all these extra taxes you're paying, you got to try to find ways to.
Well, everybody,
back.
exactly. Everybody needs to find the best possible outcome for them, don't they? And that's so. A lot of the times that they're not having to pass those costs on to the tenant, or making the point where if they have to absorb it, it makes it just a little bit easier because they know what their tax liability is.
Yep.
The taxation on properties and investment properties, it's complicated, so definitely get some good advice, for sure. Hey, so we're touching on the housing market here. We've said that in the last 10 months since you guys have been here, the market's softened a bit. And
in certain areas. We look at all of Australia, it's a bit different story. So I think the main thing that we're seeing is quite interesting. We actually got a report that came from one of the valuers that we use. So these are the valuation companies that we use to value your property. And they've then usually come out with reports in terms of certain areas, certain suburbs, and they've got most of the stats on what the property houses are and the market's doing, because they're going out there and valuing these properties all over Australia.
Yeah, they've got a lot of information and data.
okay, so what are they telling us? What are they telling you?
I think in general and overall, as we touched on before, there's certain suburbs and certain areas in Australia that has really increased in values, et cetera, et cetera. the ones that we are kind of seeing, especially being in Victoria, where we're finding it at the moment is that there's certain properties that people would have bought maybe a few years back, 1 or 2 years back, that haven't really moved, and in fact has dropped in value as well. We've done.
We're talking house and land.
There's house and lands as well as also, and the one thing, apartments generally as well. The other thing that we've seen is certain areas out in regional areas where people have moved because of COVID to get that land space. And since all big corporations and companies are bringing back people, trying to get people back into the office and working back into the office, they've, the demand to move out that far isn't there anymore.
Yeah, I think Geelong was an area that did really well leading into COVID. But then I guess they started building lots of estates out there. And some of those areas haven't moved a lot.
And the estates that you're talking about.
Yeah, because there's more land. You know, so a lot of it's around supply and demand.
Correct.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
there's a lot of supply of land, they're not really moving much now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So it's quite interesting looking, and especially investors, and we're talking to investors here, where they're looking at certain areas and certain pockets that's been, increased, or there's a new development happening in a certain estate that, they're going to build communities, et cetera, et cetera. Generally, if there's a lot of land around it, over the time and over years, the government might release more land. And we've seen it multiple times where they've got a great price, and then a few years down the track, they've opened up 2 or 3 more lands to be able to sell off. And then all of a sudden, because of the supply and demand, and there's more supply now, and there's more opportunities for people to be able to buy, then the house prices and what it would have increased when you bought the property might not be the same as time continues on, purely because of the government releasing more land.
and that's going to keep going as population growth. Correct,
That's
isn't
right,
it?
correct.
So as you say, it's about buying smartly in.
Or long term. So that would have been a lot of suburbs of Melbourne that are now sort of semi inner city, but a long time ago they would have been on the edges, and they took a while for them to grow. And I guess places like Mount Waverley and Glen Waverley
or
and
even
Rowville.
Rowville was a big one.
20 years ago they were the Cranbourne and the Clyde and the Berwick and Pakenham.
So that's going to keep continuing.
So it
in
takes
so-
time for them to become landlocked, that there's no supply, and if you go further out.
Wow. I wonder where it's going to stop. What are we up to? We're up to, we're 7 million? 6, 7 million?
No, not that much yet, are we?
No?
I thought it closer to 5, but I may be wrong.
Yeah.
We're going to have to fact check
Yeah,
that as
fact
well
check
too.
that as well.
Do you think we should know a figure like that?
Yeah, but it has definitely increased. I think they've, out of COVID, they were saying that, we will definitely fact check this, but in terms of the immigration numbers, that they've definitely increased over the last few years. Just don't know how much by, but I definitely...
There's been a bit of press about it lately. I think they're cutting back on that, but it's still like
It was a half a
coming in.
million,
Yeah, coming
and
in.
they're trying to cut it down to around about the 160 mark, I think, which is dramatic, and I don't think it's slowed that much. We'd have to look at the policy, but it is. I mean, the point that we were trying to make earlier off here was the migration's not slowing, and we've got all these people that are coming into, say, Melbourne, and we've got a shortage of properties in a city. Is that correct?
Yeah. The government's doing something called build to rent.
That's exactly that's exactly what I was going to say. So there's a property that's been just completed on the corner of Wellington Street, and it's in St Kilda Junction.
Is
So
this called the beach house?
it's called the Beach House.
Yeah.
That property is a rent-to-own property. A build-to-rent property. So it is. We tried to buy an apartment off the plans, and it was open for a minute, and then it was closed. And obviously, they made the decision to build to rent. So for our listeners, it's a property that only rents to tenants. You can't buy an apartment in that. And there's 2 towers there. There's 2 full towers. I think is there 300 apartments or 379 apartments.
Yeah, look at that.
There it is. Oh, it's up there. Beautiful. Oh, that's amazing. So they've made this very luxurious.
Live like a millionaire.
And
Mortgage
you're
free.
right. They've got an amazing pool, and they've got it is a beautiful building, specifically made just for tenants to rent.
Okay.
Wow.
Now I think don't quote me, a 1-bedroom studio was
500 a week.
500 a week.
Yeah.
Is it there?
But
Well, it said from that, so I'm guessing that'd be a small one.
Yeah. Yeah.
No views or anything.
Well-
you look into your neighbour's window
It-
with
it-
that price.
Yeah, exactly, for those particular
Yeah.
ones. You know, there's some amazing electronic billboards on the outside of it. So they've done it well. And it's a good looking property.
They've got to try something, don't they?
Well, I mean,
It might work. Who knows?
It's about supply and demand, and as you say, there's a need for this, and that's what they're doing it. I don't know whether there's any government or council incentives for this to happen, but it is a great property. We said after how many weeks is how many
There's 15 apartments occupied at the
15? There's only 15 apartments occupied. It's been open for a month, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
So it's finished now, is it?
It's done. It's been
Okay.
open for about a month.
Let's have a look.
And they've got about 15 tenants in there, or 15 apartments that have been rented out. But yeah, as I said, as we talked about it, that's the trend now, you know, and it's to fill a specific hole in the market, you know, for these immigrants that are coming in. But it's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. You know?
But it sounds like the professionals are coming in anyway, so they can.
Well, yeah,
afford that.
because as we were talking about
They're gonna
that,
be skilled.
Yeah, skilled workers. So I'd love to know what the stats are on skilled workers versus you know, families and family members and such. But as you say, these migrants have got to go somewhere, and if they can't afford to buy, they're going to be renting somewhere, and that's exactly what they're doing there. So, and that's not the first one in Melbourne too.
That's right.
You were saying there's probably 2 or 3
Yeah,
that you know of.
There's ones right in the city. I think they're all in the inner Melbourne city area, I would say. I think
Because building's not slowing down, is it?
No. Oh, they're saying costs and the builders going bust and stuff, but yeah, it's got to keep going.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really relate to high rises in the CBD, does it?
yeah, different bowl of fish.
Yeah, exactly. You can understand, and it's been in the media a lot, and it happens on a regular basis. Builders going bust, and once again, that goes back to the COVID issue and the prices of materials and fixed price building, which doesn't happen anymore, does it?
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that at all because it's just not worth their while. You know, especially with the rate of inflation and material prices. This podcast is brought to you in part by Buckfast. What is Buckfast, you ask? Well, let me tell you. It's better known as Bucky, and it's an internationally enjoyed, unique tasting tonic wine. It's equally rich in heritage as it is in taste. It packs a punch from 15% alcohol and about the same amount of caffeine as a well-known drink that gives you wings. Buckfast's enjoyment is only rivaled by its versatility from the cooking pot to the wine or cocktail glass. Drink it straight, mix it in a Negroni, or use it as a marinade. Available Australia-wide and distributed by Beeblebrox Beverages. Visit beeblebrox.com.au to find your closest stockist and buckfast.com for cocktail and recipe ideas. Talk to me about the National Property Clock. Explain to me and the listeners what it's all about.
Well, I like this one. It's from a valuer that does a lot of valuations nationally for the banks, Heron Todd White. But this one is a quick snapshot. The one on screen is from 2020. And we were talking earlier about Perth and Brisbane being hotspots at the moment. If you had looked at these guys' clock from 2020, they would have said you can see Perth's at the bottom of the market and Brisbane's in the start of recovery. So if you had followed them back then, I'm not sure if all those areas have done well, but there's two that they're saying you should be buying the bottom, not the peak. And if you can we scroll to 24?
The other way.
So this is last month. Perth's now approaching the peak, and Brisbane's still in a rising market. So I would imagine Perth 4 years ago, you probably could have bought a house, an average house maybe 500 to 600, and now you're sort of getting closer to the 800 mark.
Wow.
So that's a guide. And I like this report, just a quick snapshot without having to read hundreds and hundreds of pages. The actual report comes with, I think it's about 200-300 pages worth of information, but there's a quick snapshot. So I like this one for that.
Well, the good thing about it is you can flick this onto your clients, and it's a good quick reference. So 2024, at the peak of the market, we've got places like Albany, Bundaberg, Canberra, Darwin, Dubbo, Fraser Coast, Mildura, Mount Gambier, Southwest WA, Tamworth, and Toowoomba.
So they're saying they're maybe not the areas have done really well lately, but maybe give it a miss now because they're not going to go much further.
Yeah, and in contrast to that, the bottom of the market, we're looking at Ballina and Byron Bay. That's interesting. Coffs Harbour, Geelong, Hobart, Lismore, Southern Highlands. So if you're looking at an investment property, you're looking at those areas.
Or ones approaching the bottom, Albury, Wodonga as well. So, yeah.
Yep. And
according to this valuer, yeah.
Yeah. And they're pretty good as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, we've been getting these reports for 15 years, and yeah, as a guide, they're pretty good.
Okay, so rising market. Adelaide's in there, Adelaide Hills, Melbourne, Barossa Valley. So Brisbane's rising, Broome, Cairns. There's a lot of places, Gold Coast, that you'd think that would
Karratha,
be.
I grew up in Karratha, so
Rockhampton,
great spot.
Sydney's in a rising market. So that means for our listeners, it's at a point where we're at a lull, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, you could have done better if you bought earlier, but it's not the end of the world that you can still buy and you still get some growth. Yeah.
And a declining market, Port Macquarie. We got any explanation for that?
I don't know the area, but that's sort of semi-industrial, isn't it, Port Macquarie? But that maybe say give that a few years that you might see it getting to the bottom. That's the time to get in. But
Yeah, and we're looking at places that's starting to decline.
I mean, if you're looking at timing,
Yeah.
like we talked about luck before and long term. So buying anywhere might be okay because it'll eventually turn. But if you're short on time or in a hurry, you may want to do a bit more homework.
I think ultimately
It's a good guide
it's
anyway.
just got to stack up for you personally, doesn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
that's
everybody's got their own expectations, and if you're playing the property market to make a lot of money, well, you're doing a lot of research
Yep.
and spending a lot of time on it. But your
And the
average,
government's coming after you for a piece of it.
I know, it's insane, isn't it? But your average investor, are we finding that there's a lot more families now that are looking to invest in more property once they've got a bit of capital?
What I'm seeing is because of borrowing pressure, they can't get what they want, or they've got a home they want to buy investment. We can't get, or you can get a loan for 300-400, and you go, what are you going to buy for that? It's not going to be a good property. So we're starting to see a little bit of self-managed super fund where they've got money in super and they can use that to buy.
Does that also mean that investors that can't borrow as much as what they thought they could are going into different markets, like say rural markets, where
little bit of that.
If you think about it, your yield's going to be still the same, 4, 5, 6%. You're just looking at a smaller capital investment.
I mean, we've had clients come to us, I've got 800 to spend. I want to go, that's maybe for 3 years, I want to go to Perth because they could buy 2 properties in Perth a few years ago. Now it's back to 1, but yeah, cheaper markets, regional.
Okay.
It's affordable.
And you're finding, as we talked about before, there's a lot of your customers in Victoria are now looking out of state because of certain things, obviously the taxation and land tax, and it's just not viable at the moment. Is it not viable, or is it just not as good as what it was?
Yes, I think about it.
That's a big,
Yeah?
not good as what it was. I think with the last 20 years of interest rates going down, people being able to borrow more, all that, and now it's all shifted.
We even had clients that bought not such great properties. They just got lucky because the market went well, or they bought in Brisbane off the plan, and it was I think up in Queensland, the apartments are going actually quite well, Gold Coast and areas like that. So a few years ago, it would have been a good property, but they just got lucky, and so there's a bit of that as well.
Well,
but
you
now
say-
you might not get lucky, and you got all these taxes that if you don't get it right, it's costly.
As you say, luck does have a little bit to do. Because when I bought my first commercial property, I had fucking no idea. Honestly, had
But
no idea.
You diversified instead of going all your properties in residential. You've got some commercial. So if residential's gone flat, which maybe it has, your commercial property's done okay. So
Well, I knew,
diversification.
I knew commercial because I'd always had commercial properties. I'd always leased them, in business, and it just seemed like a natural thing to do. Well, why am I going to pay rent? Like some people, why am I paying rent when I can buy? It was the same with commercial.
But maybe you did something you knew too. So you had some knowledge, not just bought something.
To be quite honest, looking back, I was very naive, but ultimately it was a good investment. That was 10 years ago now, and that property's tripled in value. So lucky, yes, I could have bought somewhere in a certain area, and the capital growth might have only been half of that. But as we've said previously, generally year on year in the last, it doubles every decade. Is that correct? That's
the word,
generally what's happened. Are we saying that? Are we saying that the figures for the next 10 years are going to be less than the previous 10 years for capital growth?
You think it'd have to be, but the demand and migration maybe and that's where you hear some commentators say, well, look, you still be okay because it's going to go like the share market, So, but it's held back a bit with the cost of living and bits and pieces.
But once again, it's still not stopping though, is it? And that's the thing. It's like there's no bad time to get in the market. You've just got to get into the market.
With people buying it.
Yeah.
So if we talk about interest rates, we touched on it earlier. Now, you've had a lot of calls from people wanting you to check with the bank. That's what you do day in, day out, is you try to save people money on their interest rates. So we've got that slide up there, Ash. So you're negotiating, so we've got stats here, negotiated customer interest rates for the last 4 months. What are we in? We're in July. So the first quarter. So you've got 21 clients you negotiated successfully over $30,000 a year in savings, and that's $1,470 a year in savings per client, or $122 per month back in their pocket.
Yeah, this was interesting that we knew we were doing it, and we were doing it for about 2-3 years, and we keep a sheet because we have to monitor it. But only for this podcast that we thought, just get some actual figures. If I was to guess, I'd say like 80% of people I talk to, I can get a reduction, and it's normally 0.2, 0.3. Yeah, I might save them, depending if it's a $500,000 loan, I'll save them $1,000 a year. So it was interesting to actually get the stats and just the last few months, and it's a little bit better.
Just pull that mic a little bit closer to you. Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it was just interesting to get the actual stats, and a lot of time it's just a phone call from a client saying, "Hey Ted, we're thinking we might want to get a new home." I said, "Look, while we're at it, we'll have a look at your loan and see if we can get it cheaper while we're waiting." And we often do pricing and we get some reductions, and it's a phone call or an email, a fill out a portal, and it happens within a few days.
Well, I think last time we chatted about 10 months ago, did we agree that there was no savings to be had? There was no negotiating. It is what it is. Is that? Am I correct in saying that? That back then, the interest rates are the interest rates, and that's it. You're fucked. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, but these days there are a lot more. The banks are trying to hang on to their customers because there's a lot of movement, and they're losing a lot. So they've got retention teams, but the pricing now is actually worse. Like we said, rates have gone up effectively. So if you did your loan a year ago, it's not much work we can do. But if we did 2, 3, 4 years ago, there's often reductions, and it's pretty easy to do.
Okay, so once again, we said that the banks are trying to hold on to their customers.
So they'll give us good deals, yeah.
Okay, so
better deals than we were getting.
So which banks are losing out to other banks? What have we got? The top four.
The major banks are generally higher in general.
That's the top four we're talking about.
Yeah, the big four.
Big four.
So we do a lot of pricing with them, and they're keen to hang on to clients. So we're getting good reductions with them because often their starting rate's worse. And some of the smaller banks, we're starting to see it. Some banks, it does wane back and forth where their appetite to retain, they'll offer better deals. And because we're doing so many of them, we get to see trends. So it's interesting. Some banks that I know that we won't try refinance because they're super tough trying to get a client out of a bank because they'll do anything they can, give him cash back to stay and things like that.
Oh, really? Cash back?
To stay.
Wow.
So you could be a customer with this bank and say, look, I'm going to refinance from the bank, and they say, no, we'll give you $2,500 to stay.
That's amazing.
And drop your rate.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, we see it quite often now.
Yeah.
Are we taking that $2,500 to the casino?
Double.
Just chuck it all on red.
Double on red.
Chuck it all on red. Well, it's good. It's good to know that people. There's a lot. As you say, there's a lot of mortgage stress out there. I mean, obviously, there's only so much you can do. But yeah, if you don't ask the question, you won't get an answer, will you? So.
Well, and it's not that hard for us because they've had so many requests. They've set up portals for it. So. We just fill it out, put the information. Don't even have to be our clients, and we can get some reduction. So it's a bit of a no-brainer.
So we said the top four are generally in the higher interest rate bracket compared to the other ones. I just note that ANZ's buying Suncorp. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have bought it. And,
They have bought
and
it.
It's been signed off, yeah.
Right, that was just a recent thing. Because I think I've got some finance with Suncorp, and the reason why I went with Suncorp was that I don't like ANZ. So does that mean I'm going to have a conversation with you guys on Monday morning?
I think they'll keep the brand.
Yeah, they're keeping the brand and everything.
Yeah,
but
for a while.
At the end of the day,
I think eventually they'll get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a big name in Queensland and
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big down here.
Because they've got their insurance as well too, aren't they? Yeah,
That's
it's
easy to pay.
huge.
Yeah, correct.
Wow, another one bites the dust.
Yeah.
It's like independent brewers being brought up by the conglomerates.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to keep on happening, isn't it? Hey, we're talking about fixed loans as well. Now, is anybody fixing loans? Because obviously, for those people listening, a variable interest rate can go up and down based on the market at any time. A fixed rate is a fixed amount of interest that you pay over a period, and we're talking 1, 2, 3, how many, up to 5 years?
Correct. Yep.
Yep. So there's no incentive to do that at the moment. Am I correct?
If you're borrowing to the hilt, I think it's a good incentive to
Yeah.
fix it, and you know it's not going to go any more. If you've got room to move, then if you're fixing because the rate looks good, you're betting against the bank who sets the rates.
Okay, but knowing what we know, we're not looking at any more rate rises in the foreseeable future, are we?
Yeah, but the fixed rates, they build that into it too. The fixed rates aren't dramatically better, so it's not that incentive which. Through COVID, when rates were 1-2%, everyone was jumping on it.
Oh, that's completely different, exactly. Yeah, but what I'm saying right now is that if you're fixing a rate at maybe 0.25 over the current rate, there's not a lot of incentive to do that, is there?
Yeah,
because knowing what we know, technically the rates are going to start coming down at some stage.
Yeah, so a few months ago, they were talking about it on the news and the media that rates are going to come down into the year, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Fixed rates are actually low, and as the reports come out with inflation figures, the fixed rates moved. So now they're not 0.25% cheaper; they're about the same.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's for what I see is most people it's about the rate, and when it's higher or the same, there's no incentive. When it was lower, there was a real drive.
Oh, for sure, exactly. Yes, I'm saying there is no incentive to do it, is there?
But it should be around why are you doing it? It's because I'm borrowing a bit more and I'm a bit uncomfortable. I want to lock in it so just in case it does go higher, I can still afford it. So
Are people still doing that?
there's a little bit of that, yeah.
It's based on the
Younger people?
Yeah, I guess it's the other thing to do with some certainty. Well, as we've talked about the last few, conversations we've had just then, that the cost of living and everything's gone up. So if they can find some sort of certainty in terms of any of the expenses going out, and one way we can do it is through the fixed rates, and it's possible. And there's certain rates now that there are 0.25 less than what the variable rates are. In terms of the fixed rates, you fix for 1, 2, or 3
Yeah,
years.
the 2 and 3 year rates are the better ones of the fixed.
Correct.
So 0.25 on $1 million mortgage is how much a month?
$200 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a nice meal out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
Or it's a tank of fuel or groceries.
What you're sort of saying, rates are forecast to go down a little bit. That's what the fixed rates are saying too.
Yeah.
But not dramatic. One movement.
And are we still thinking that it's going to be in that first quarter next year or not?
It's hard to say because they said that it was going to go now.
Yeah.
Earlier in the year, they said that it was going to drop.
They
this quarter.
adjusted that pretty quickly, though.
Yeah.
I remember them saying that.
Yeah.
The media coming out going, yeah, the rates are coming down. And then it's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was bad figures a couple of weeks ago.
Correct.
And you said the bad inflation, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's another one coming out in a couple of weeks, so I guess we'll find out more then.
Yeah, but I think you got to look at those numbers in like a quarter instead
Yeah,
of like a
that's
month
right.
on month.
That's right.
So you get a figure month on month over a quarter can be completely
Correct.
different.
Yeah.
Well, often they're delayed too. They have to gather and then report it. It's a month or two behind anyway.
Yeah, but what's very interesting what we see is that whatever is out in the media really also changes the confidence in people spending also. So at the start of the year, where everyone's saying the rates are going to go down, then people are confident that, all right, well, if the rates are going to go down, let's just start spending more. It's fine. And then all of a sudden it drives the whole narrative in a different direction.
Well, you'd think somebody would be smart enough to put the narrative out there that they're going to go up. All right, so people tighten their belts
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
Inflation comes down, problem solved.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck, I should be running for, what, governor, president, whatever.
The head of the RBA.
Yeah.
The RBA.
If you're listening, RBA. No, I think they've got a really great woman that's doing a great job so far because she's done nothing. She hasn't put them up and she hasn't put them down.
That's
She's
right.
trying to scare people, saying they may go up.
Yeah,
Take it
well,
easy,
She
take it
has.
easy.
She's got.
Yeah.
She's got a good use of words. She does. She does tangle the web. No, I would not want that fucking job at all. That would be terrible. That would be absolutely terrible. Hey, we actually discussed in one of our previous podcasts about a family that was applying for some finance, and they had a mark on their credit report from one mortgage payment that was missed. One payment. Now they had the money to pay for it, but it was just a technical. Oh no, it wasn't even a technical error. It was the payment wasn't scheduled to go out. It was somebody's fault for not
happens
doing
all
that.
the time, yeah.
It happens all the time.
Correct.
Now that directly impacted that couple on borrowing more money. Credit reports are pretty important when it comes to applying for loans. It's the first thing that you guys do. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we were touching base on in terms of these rates, so these banks that are offering cashbacks are generally to the clients that do have a high credit score. So they've been great with their repayments. If you're majority of the time with these,
They want the
retention
low risk
offers-
borrowers.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's why it's so important, because in order for you to qualify all the great deals that the banks are offering to keep you there is an importance on what they're looking for as well, and why they're giving those to certain clients and not giving it to other clients.
Yeah, the rate's now also driven by risk. So if it's you've got a property worth a lot in a loan, small loan, that's better for them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low risk. In a credit report, what do people need to be aware of? Like if you're borrowing, say for instance you're a first time borrower, you're trying to get your first home. What should people be aware of when they're doing the application and the credit card? What do they need to be?
I think the biggest and the main one is to avoid applying for any sorts of unsecured lending. So the biggest one we see now that has really reduced credit scores are buy now, pay later facilities.
We
pay,
touched
after
on
pay.
we touched on that, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's just a fucking. It's just a minefield.
And now the individual banks are also introducing those to their existing customers too. So there's step pay by one of the banks now. There's a lot of different payment things that you can do within your own bank.
Oh, bankers are
Banks-
bringing in these.
That's right.
Wow, that's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Oh, it's the credit card's the same. They've got credit cards.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
they make more money in that
Isn't there
area.
a higher risk? There's higher risk in these pay by whatever schemes.
Yeah.
But there's bigger interest returns on it. Is it? That's
for
correct.
the lender, yeah.
Pay by
Correct.
four. Whatever they
That's
are.
right. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times you get caught out because they advertise it as interest free, et cetera, et cetera. You'll pay fees if you're late, but it's very. I actually had a particular client just recently where they've come through to Australia. When you're brand new and you're first home buyer, you don't really get a credit score. So a lot of the times there's a lot of talk out there that if you get a credit card and you show that you can repay, then that generally helps with the credit score over
Does
time.
it?
I haven't seen that. Well, this particular one, they had savings in their savings account, so they decided, let's just sign up for a buy now, pay later, Afterpay, Zip Pay, so then I can keep all my savings in my savings account. And in this way, if I just generally keep all my savings there, then I'm going to get a little bit of a higher return.
Yeah.
So they did it to actually make money, but when we ended up going through the loan, did the credit report, their credit score was just it was below than what they could actually lend. As a very average, just to give the viewers and the listeners an idea, banks would generally want to see it around, at the very minimum, 700 as the credit score figure.
It's out of 1,000, yeah.
Out of, I've seen
It goes
the
up about
highest.
1,200, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
1,200 is
Yep.
probably the highest. And then anything below that just makes it a little bit harder. So yeah, this one here, because of the buy now, even though they paid it on time, they've had no issues with their Zip Pay, Afterpay repayments, and they've obviously still got $50,000-$60,000 sitting in the savings account because all they want to do is just collect that bonus interest every
Yep.
single month. Their score was out of 400, and it's purely just because of them applying for different sort of credit sources.
And they didn't have
Not
the
even
time.
using it. Are we saying using it or just applying for? Because as we
It
said,
wouldn't matter.
applying,
Wouldn't
yeah.
matter.
because it's the same. It's the same as a credit card.
Yeah.
You can have a credit card with a $10,000 limit on it.
Yep.
Have no money on it, no money owed, and that 10,000 is times 7 against your
borrowing capacity.
your borrowing capacity.
Probably about it's changed now to
5
about
to 6,
Yeah,
yeah.
5 to 6 at the moment. But what it comes down to is the banks and the credit reporting agencies thinking of the worst case, and mean that if you were to take out that because you're struggling,
Yeah.
that's where you're going to be sitting at. Same way with the buy now afterpay. They notice that you're the one you know as a whole, and if they're looking at your credit score as an individual,
Yeah.
you're consistently taking out unsecured
Not living
lending.
within your means. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
if you're
though
doing-
their money's sitting in the bank.
But yeah, they just didn't have the time to recover
Mm.
because they knew to the country. Over time, their score would improve slowly.
Yeah, of course, it's the same with anything.
Mm.
It's like trying to find an apartment or something when you've got no renting history.
Mm.
These clients had no positive. They had a little negative, which is the buy now, pay later, but no positive to increase their score.
Yeah. That's insane, isn't it?
Mm.
But
Is
you,
there,
you can still get a home for it, but some banks say, no, we can't touch it.
Correct.
Purely
Yeah.
hits their
or,
policy.
or they're going to say you can borrow less,
Yeah, yeah.
which inhibits what
Well, you got less choice, so indirectly it's
That's
borrowing
right.
less, yeah.
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 And I guess it's what's interesting for us is that we've got hundreds of different options and different lenders that we can see and offer. But if they've gone directly to a bank, they'll be rejected, and sometimes they would have no idea why.
Oh, and the more times they apply, the more it worsens their score.
And that's if they go directly with the bank as opposed to seeing guys like you.
That's just because they're going with one option. And
Okay.
if they get said no, then they don't get told why, and they're then just kind of been having to go and apply for another bank. And every time you go and keep applying for different banks, that further reduces your score.
It snowballs. How demoralising would that be, eh?
Yeah.
You don't know until you know.
Yeah.
So I think the key point here is that if you're borrowing, you need to see guys like
Chat to
yourself.
someone, yeah.
Yeah, have a chat with the professional.
That's the first thing you do. Pick up the phone, call Rate One.
Definitely.
Or turn up at
the locations.
Mulgrave or where was the
Airport
other?
West.
Airport West.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can read down the bottom of the screen. That's where the details will be. You have to insert that later. Well, I think we've covered a lot today. Did we cover everything off with the credit report? Because as I said, it's the first thing you do before you do anything else.
Well, probably the only thing on the credit report that we see is the banks keep, or the credit report stores 2 years of history for everyone, any credit facility. So missing payments, missing one's okay, but
Well, that was my other
it's got
question.
2
was-
years of history, and then it's gone.
Yeah, that was my. So it is 2 years. So
Yeah.
that family that we're talking about that had that mark on their credit score
That would drop off eventually.
after
Yeah.
a couple of years, it's still there. So what's sort of a time period would that be semi forgotten about? It'd still be there, but
one missed payment after a year,
Yeah.
you just have to put a note and explain it.
That's
but
right.
Between the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think at that time, what it ended up being is because it was so so new that the score dropped dramatically. And as Ted was saying, over time, it does increase. So we've checked it again
With
just
good conduct.
recently. Yeah, and with good conduct, it's now...
Good conduct.
Now
Paying on time.
Yeah, paying on time, that's what it is. Yeah.
So I feel like a prisoner. Well, they feel like prisoners.
Yeah.
Prisoners
On
to
parole.
the bank.
Yeah.
To the bank.
But yeah, I think because we've done one recently for that particular client, and the scores increase about 200, 250, so dramatically.
And that was what, about a year or so
about a
later?
year or
Yeah.
yeah. So then now it's as before it would have been a little bit more of an explanation with different
Yeah.
banks. Now it's maybe a commentary to explain why, and mainly because they're looking at the score and the good conduct over the last more recent period of time makes it better.
And we're not because I know the story about them. We're not talking about one property. They've got multiple properties, and something like one payment on one property has impacted it that much. So if you think about any indiscretion in your earning history for any individual, is going to bring up a red mark, and it's going to be detrimental.
It's recorded now, yeah.
Yeah.
And everything, because obviously everything's electronic. I mean, good old days of cash, God love them. Everything's recorded. So every transaction, and it's the thing is like you can't diddle the tax department
The
because
credit-
they can. Yeah,
The credit reports are picking up more lenders now. At the start, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was picking up just the major banks. Then it picked up the second tier lenders. Now it's picking up all the small places. So the report's pretty comprehensive now. That they sort of got a good idea. You can't really hide.
yeah, and it's a free. It doesn't cost. It's a free report, isn't it? Is
You
it
can,
free?
you can get your free one online.
Yeah.
They say it takes a week or two. We get them. We pay a small price, but we don't generally charge for it.
But that's the same report from the same
It's what the banks look at, yeah.
So it's one outlet that's giving those reports.
There's one main one, Ilion Equifax.
Yeah, Equifax.
There's a couple of Dun and Bradstreet, but most of the banks use that Ilion one,
Yeah.
Equifax.
I think a lot of people would be surprised as to exactly where they sit. You know, so do yourself a favour, get online and do a free credit check.
Yeah,
And just
Yeah, a little bit with the identity theft, that when people steal your identity and they take a card, it goes on your report. It takes a while to clean that up, but yeah, you should be looking at it because we look at it because we want to see what the banks know about a customer. So when we're spending time preparing an application, we get it right rather than not knowing, putting it up, then we find out all these things later.
well, yeah, you don't want to be bamboozled by something like that,
just
especially
slows
with the
things
amount
down.
with the amount of time that you spend and the effort in this to do
Compliance.
to get the best to get the best for your client.
It also helps that we're up front and we're in the forefront, then on the back foot
Yeah.
of them saying, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we knew that already. This is,
This is what
all
happened
the
there.
different things that
Yeah.
we've done. Yeah.
And because you've done this for so long, you know, as you say, getting on the front foot gives your client the best possible outcome
that's
and,
right.
and the best amount of knowledge to make decisions that are best for them involved.
Yeah,
so.
some banks are better with than others, so you steer away from the ones that make you trouble. So.
Yeah, correct.
All right, what's coming up in the next quarter for you? What's on the horizon? Because I see your emails come through every so often. You're pumping up certain properties, you're pumping up certain markets, you're telling your clients what's good and what's bad. What's coming up for you guys? What can you see on the horizon?
Or for me, it's a little bit more self-managed super fund lending because people are struggling to get something for investment that they can afford.
Is that a new thing for you? Is this a new sector?
No, it's not. It's been around, I don't know, 5-10 years, but it's more prevalent. We're seeing more because people just can't buy a good investment property for 500 anymore, so they need to go 800-900, and a self-managed super fund loan doesn't affect their personal cash flow.
Okay, well, let's break that down a little bit further for our listeners in that. So a self-managed super fund is not your industry fund that you'd pay your wages into. This is something that you create for yourself, which is separate to paying superannuation and your wages. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, generally it starts as a retail fund with your employer, but you can roll it out of there and put into it your own, and generally need to set up with an accountant and a planner.
Yep.
And then once you've got it there, it's either invested in shares, it's self-managed, managed fund, something like that. And then now there's an option that the super fund can borrow money to buy a property and leverage the money you've got in your super.
Okay, so you've got bigger buying power.
Yeah, and it doesn't affect your personal situation. So people that buy property in the super, they don't have to make the repayments or don't have to pay the deposit.
Yep.
But they also don't get the return, not until retirement. So it's quite attractive in that way. It's got some tax benefits as well.
Yeah, definitely as well. And once again, talk to your accountant about it. It is a good one.
Definitely.
I went down that road a couple of years ago, and I think from memory, you need at least 200 grand in there for it to be worthwhile because
Give or take, yeah.
you've got the management of it, you've got the management fees and the other fees associated with it, and
Yeah, one thing that when I talk to people, so we're seeing people that are buying property and they're often, that's their only investment, whereas if you talk to a financial planner, they want you diversifying, either commercial, residential, or shares.
Yep.
So it's good to have a mix, and if all your super is all in property and all your investments in your personal situation property, you're relying on the property market. So if it does well, yeah, great, but if it doesn't, so it's good to have enough left in there after you buy the property and super that it's diversified as well.
yeah, well, you say
in a perfect world.
diversified. I mean, it just makes sense, doesn't it? All right, so we're seeing that at the moment, which is par for the course. Obviously, cause and effect. What else?
Well, a little bit of the interstate borrowing. I'm doing more
investors.
Investors buying interstate than I did before. That's probably more driven by the media and property prices. I'm not sure on your end.
Well, I work with a lot of home buyers and first home buyers, so that's always going to be quite important. The governments are still rolling out those schemes, so 5% deposit for new.
Yeah, we
first
talked
home.
about previously, yeah.
Yeah,
So
good scheme.
Yeah, very good scheme, and they're continuing that on. So that's going to keep going. It's going to keep helping more people get into families get into homes, getting out of that rental market, instability type of thing.
Do you still get a fuzzy feeling every time you get a loan approved?
Yeah, when it's at a 95%, yeah, definitely, still do.
That's good. That's good to hear because you're helping these families
Yeah.
get into a home, as
Yeah.
you say, which is one of the biggest financial investments
Yeah.
or decisions they'll make in their life.
Yeah,
and you
correct.
help that happen, which is pretty fucking cool, isn't it?
And it's even better when they come back 5 or 10 years later
Yeah.
and they've got
We want
equity
more.
and-
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
And then now, I guess Ted will feel that now with them wanting to buy investments, and that's kind of where he sees it now.
I like it now. I get the kids of the clients I dealt with 20 years ago. They're helping their kids buy their first property, so that's quite rewarding.
Well, that's testament to you and what you've done, isn't it, over the course? How many years have you been in business now?
Best part of 20. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. So those kids are flowing through.
Well, a lot of them were new migrants out in the burbs 20 years ago buying their first home, and now they've probably got 2 or 3, and they're trying to get the kids into the market early.
Yeah, smart. And as you say,
And new migrants tend to be a little better with that.
well, I think they're a little bit more frugal, a little bit smarter with money. They understand what it can do for them, whereas a lot of people that grow up in certain areas, they're gifted stuff. They don't have to work. Even young people now, they don't have to work hard for things. It's more expected for it to be laid on a plate or it to fall out of the sky in their lap. Different mindset, completely different mindset. I mean, even immigrant families that are pooling together, families and families, to get into the property market, to then build on that. That just makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you're in that situation where you can pool your resources, unbelievable, and just get a foot in the door and then just keep building and growing. And that's exactly what the migrant families did when you first started. They've done exactly the same thing, and ultimately it's for their kids and their families to thrive and survive in shitty markets like this. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I've got the warm fuzzies just thinking about it. Hey guys, once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Once again, I think we've covered a lot of bases. There's a lot of people that listen to this and will take something away from that. If they need to call you guys, the information's on the website. Make the call, have a chat, and you'll be better for it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a wrap, Ash.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in and for your time. You know the vibe, I'm steady living until I die. It's a loose state of mind, and we showed you that. Keep it authentic and real, I hope you coming back. Hey, make sure that you subscribe, cause we got it popping all the time, and it's going down. If you wanna elevate, wanna live a better life, keep it locked here. You know it's a loose state of mind, let's go.